You're listening to Two Girls, One Crossword.
There's a tiny cat behind me.
I see a small kitten back there.
On a shelf.
Cat on a shelf.
Yes. If you want to know what I'm talking about, this is a shameless plug for our YouTube channel. If you want to watch us, you can see Chelsea's Christmas decorations and my cat, who hopefully... He's been in a bad mood the past couple of days. He's running around a lot, so hopefully he stays quiet. If not, I apologize if you hear like scrambling and screaming in the background.
He's like, Mom, hello.
Yeah, what about me?
Pay attention to me. Yeah. Yeah, my dog's been barking a lot today at the door. I just love it, that he stands at the door and he barks at it as if he's had any results from that in the past. Like, he has no ROI for barking at the door, and yet he continues. And I'm just like, you're an idiot. You're wasting valuable energy.
I know, but the one time he doesn't is when something bad will happen. You know that if someone ever like broke into your house, I don't think Neptune would do anything. I feel like
you'd be afraid.
Yeah, or it'd be like, oh, you have a sausage? I guess I'll just take, like, you're my new best friend now.
I know. He would bark a lot, I think, if he didn't know who they were, which is one thing. But, like, at the same time, like, how many neighbors do you know that would come to towards a barking dog if they heard them? Like, if I was getting killed or something. They wouldn't, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, anyways, hopefully that won't happen.
Anyway, happy Christmas.
Yes, everyone, welcome to our final episode before the new year.
Whoa.
So we'll take off. You won't hear from us again until next year, which is only like a week away. No.
Ish.
2 weeks away from when you're hearing this.
Yes. So we'll see you in 2022. Again.
Maybe, if we survive. We make it. We shouldn't even joke about that now, actually. Never mind. Forget I said that.
Forget it. Scratch it. Cut.
This is Two Girls, One Crossword. I'm Grace Topinka.
And I'm Chelsea Rowan. And we're back again. We're always back.
On your favorite weekly podword, Crosscast.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, we're here, I guess.
We are here. Should we just, I don't know, should we just jump right into our...
I feel like people expect a good segue from us, and we never provide.
No.
I mean...
Okay, I'm sorry. If you listen to us and you expect a good segue, then you must be often disappointed in life because you have unrealistic expectations.
Speaking of unrealistic expectations, shall we do the poll?
Yes.
All
so, this was a 6-answer poll because we asked
crazy
on Twitter at the Good Eve Girls, what's your favorite type of creation story? See the comments for the 5th and 6th choices because there were 6 choices or 6 different categories. This was based off Chelsea's topic last week. So potential answers were from nothing, from chaos,
oh my god,
from world parent, from emergence, from cosmic egg, and from earth diver. And yes, I did really enjoy picking out the emojis for each of these. Picking out the emojis for our poll answers is really a small joy that I have in life.
That should make our listeners curious enough to follow us on Twitter so that they can participate in the polls, which Grace actually puts in a lot of effort. As you can see, she pours her heart and soul into this. It's very creative. And we're constantly surprised by the results. So give us the results.
Well, since this was, if you know Twitter, you can only have 4 answers at a time. So we had to do 6. So I had to do a little bit of math to, combine all of them.
Okay, Miss Mathematics.
Yeah. So the tie for first place with 25% each was from nothing and from a cosmic egg.
Okay. I have to say, I did not speak about Cosmic Egg last week, but that was one that does exist. If you're interested in learning about Cosmic Egg creation stories, you can Google it. Don't listen to my episode.
I see that you didn't have that one, but then I saw it on like the list, and so I was like, well, I can't make 4 and then a 5th one at the end. I have to have 6. So
I figured.
But who knew people liked us? Maybe people were upset that you didn't talk about it.
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry.
Or people just have no idea what it means, but just thought it was
I've been getting hate mail for days.
Tied for second place with 17% each is from World Parent and from Earth Diver. And then last place with 8% each, another tie, was From Chaos and From Emergence.
Ooh, what would you pick?
I picked Earth Diver. I think I
Okay.
mentioned this last week too. I feel I'm comforted at the idea of like being on the back of a turtle.
That is extremely comforting. I picked From World Parent because I really like the Norse creation story. Although it is kind of terrifying to think of like entities or like godlike beings just ripping apart the first being and then using their body for the world. So if you believe in the Norse creation myth, we are currently living on the body of a massive frost giant, Ymir. So do with that what you will.
I liked that one too. That was probably my second. I was deciding between those.
My second was Earth Diver as well. Anyway,
Oh my
we're like
gosh.
twins.
Maybe we can combine the two.
Love that. Love that.
Start our own religion. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll start our
Belief
own world.
system.
Yeah. Works for me. So now hits and shits, I think. The last hits and shits of the year.
Oh yes, the yearly roundup.
The yearly roundup. We don't actually have a yearly roundup. I think in the past we have done something.
I think we usually do in the beginning of the year, maybe.
Maybe. Who knows? This year
We
has
do
been bonkers.
A retrospective.
Yes, exactly. If you're expecting some sort of end of year roundup, again, the disappointment. I'm very sorry. Not going to happen. You have to wait until 2022 to get any thoughts from the previous year whatsoever. But we will be doing our regularly scheduled program, just regular down home on the farm hits and shits.
Yes, we will. Do you want me to start us off?
Sure. I'm just going to take a sip of my massive Taco Bell Pepsi, which you'll be able to see if you're on YouTube. Another shameless plug for our YouTube.
Wow, there's just so many things for people to tune in to watch. A cat on a shelf. Sleeping now. He's sleeping now, for people wondering. And Taco Bell Pepsi.
I love it.
The USA Today puzzle from December 13th by Brandon and Brooke, edited by Eric Agard. It just said Brandon and Brooke, no last names, so I don't know if that's their like stage name.
Tell us.
I liked 65 Across, Fourth Planet mentioned in Interplanet Janet, because it sounded familiar to me, but I didn't know what it was, and I looked it up, and it's by the same people who do Schoolhouse Rock, or Schoolhouse Rock.
Okay.
So the answer is Mars.
Nice.
And then, this is for us, 26 Down, split screen social media video.
Yes, TikTok duet.
Yes.
I loved seeing that.
I did as well. That was it for that one.
Okay, well, my only shit for the week comes from that puzzle. And I can't really get into it. I can get into it, but oh my God. Okay, let me just preface this by, yes, I know that I'm late to the Zelda game, but
right.
I do feel like the clue for the Zelda answer in the USA Today puzzle from December, 13th, was so shocking and such a spoiler. I gasped. I literally gasped aloud because I was so shocked to be spoiled. And I know I'm 23 years late.
Yeah, I feel like
and
you've passed the point.
But I guess at the same time, I'm like, is there literally no other way to clue Zelda than that spoiler? Oh my God. And so, of course, I had to message everybody that has been following my progress on the Zelda journey. I was going to tell my therapist also, who loves Zelda, but our appointment was canceled this week, so I'll have to tell her next time. I'm sure she'll be shocked.
Schedule an emergency phone call.
This is an emergency. Zelda was spoiled for me. I mean, it is what I know. It's been 23 years, but still, I was shocked and I was spoiled and a little upset. And I hate you all, basically.
Well, you heard it here first. I feel like there's a Harry Potter spoiler. Or did we spoil it? No, I feel like there was one in the crossword. Like when we first started, because I remember talking about it and being like, is this too soon? Is this allowed to be in?
Right. No, I know. And I am of the belief that if it's 10 years past, like, it doesn't count as a spoiler.
Except when it comes to you.
Except when it
personally.
comes to me personally, and then it doesn't. The rules always just bend for me. So
Of
sorry. What else? I actually did like that puzzle overall, though. Even though at the end of it, I was like shaking. I was so upset.
I'm sorry.
I'm just fine. I'm being dramatic. I liked 42 across. Warning taped to a pillow fort, and the answer was go away. I loved that. And then I also like 7 down. This is like simple. This answer shows up all the time. The clue was softball refs, and the answer was umps, UMPS, but it's always like clued in relation to baseball. So it's really nice to see softball. And I don't think, for people who don't solve crosswords regularly, and I know some of our listeners aren't regular solvers, like that might not seem like a big deal to see like some sort of like, woman or feminine representation of a clue or an answer, but it really is a big deal because most of the time you're being fed like, cis male type clues. The default is male. So it's really nice to just take something that shouldn't be gendered and just give it to the other gender. Anyway, it's interesting and I like it. Yeah, that's what I got from that puzzle. So
The other gender, a other gender, you mean?
Excuse me. Thank you, Grace.
I know.
A different one. One of the many other.
I finally did the December 12th airplay Washing WAPO Sunday by Evan Bernholz that you refused to do with me because you had already done it and you hate me.
Yes, true. All of the above, true.
So airplay was the name of the puzzle, and I thought it had a nice theme. I don't want to say cute because I feel like that's so diminutive, but it was cute. Okay. 65 across was the revealer, relaxation, exercise, instruction, and a hint to this puzzle's theme. So there were 6 different themed answers, and it'll just be easier to do an example. So 96 across, Arctic bird performance, ? And then in parentheses, inhale. And the answer is puffin concert. And the corresponding one is 112 across, marketing firm executive JD's daughters when they were kids. Exhale. And the answer is the Power Girls. So the one that has inhale has puff in the answer, puff in concert. If you take puff out, it's just in concert. And then the other one that's exhale takes the breath or puff out of the answer. So the Power Puff Girls, the Power Girls.
Love it.
And that clue made me laugh because it reminded me of how the other day we tried to convince our friend who is Irish that in the US it's called the Power Bubble Girls.
Oh yeah,
and,
what did we call? Yeah,
and that Bubble's name is Puff, or her name is Puff in, or no, Puff Girls, and
Bubble
her name
Puff
is Power.
Girls. Yeah, exactly. we had him going for like maybe 30 seconds.
He believed us for a second.
It was amazing.
But not everyone in the room was on board.
They weren't. So
that's the problem when there's other people around to witness us.
Exactly. What you need to do, this is just a general piece of advice for anybody out there who likes, instilling chaos into a room for literally no reason other than their pleasure. You need to make sure that you have a secure friend base. And by that, I mean, you need to be able to say anything, and then the people that you surround yourself and call your friends need to immediately hype you up no matter what it is that you've said. Like, literally, they just need to go with the flow because that's how it works. That's how the joke works.
I will almost always play along.
Seriously. Unless it's something totally ridiculous. Grace has at times been like, that's not going to work. And she doesn't play along.
Sometimes I know it's just not going to work. You have to only do it. You have to be careful when you do it because otherwise people are always going to be expecting it.
I know. What was I trying to do at the holiday party? Who did I say? I said Kevin Bacon was my uncle.
Yeah.
Or something. Or not Kevin Bacon, Michael Keaton.
Michael Keaton was your uncle. I feel like that's too... No, that would have come up before.
I know. You're right.
But no, you're right. I should have gone along with it, but I just knew it wasn't going to land.
No,
but normally I do.
I appreciate the feedback. Live feedback is always helpful.
Anyways, obviously were really fun to hang out with. Other ones I liked from that puzzle were 65 down, athlete who may be saved by the bell. Was a boxer.
Oh, yes.
And then 70 down, takes away somebody's soul, but soul was capitalized.
Oh, right.
And so the answer was toes.
Yes, it was like repo or toes. Yeah, exactly. At first, because Soul was capitalized, I was like, this is like a Soul Cycle thing. Like, I can't. And then I was like, oh, a Kia Soul. Like, got it.
Shout out to my mom who almost got a Kia Soul, like the hamster car. And she told me, and I was like, whoa, why? She's like, your sister had the same response. What's wrong with that car? I was like, I don't know how to explain it. It's just kind of a strange car. But now I kind of feel like, I don't know. It's kind of
Have you
cool
driven
to
a
have
Kia Soul?
Kia Soul? No.
I've had rental Kia Souls before. And let me just say, aside from it being one of the ugliest cars I've ever seen, it is an incredible drive. The visibility is amazing. There's literally so many windows. And it drives really nicely. But I think from the exterior,
I feel like it's just different, you know? It changes everything you thought you knew about what a car should look like.
Exactly.
And so I kind of respect people who have them.
Truly. I have massive respect for Kia Soul drivers. I have thought about whether or not this car is ugly for a long time because I actually genuinely like how it drives.
Mm-hmm.
I landed on I don't think it's a pretty car. But
does that matter, though, at the end of the day?
To me. Myself and I. To me. Anyway, cool.
Well, my mom didn't end up getting it. Honestly, the only reason she would want it is because she likes the hamsters in the commercial. That is it. So
I don't blame her. I also like the hamsters in the commercial. Do you remember when those commercials first came out? Like, I remember when they first landed in America, and I was like, this is wild. They were like...
blew everyone's mind.
Yeah. It was a cultural reset, truly. That is the definition of a cultural reset, was when the Soul hamsters showed up. Mm-hmm. It worked.
I know what that car looks like. Ask me any other car. I have no idea.
Couldn't tell you one car from another.
No.
All right. What I got here? Oh, I have like a one-off clue that I just wanted to shout out. I just loved this one from the Saturday, December 11th, USA Today by Kate Hawkins, 49 across. Baseball action that sounds like a cake. And the answer is bunt. A bunt cake. Yeah. Or just bunting the ball, I guess, in baseball. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I loved it. That's where my two best topics collide, baseball and baking.
Well, you like baking, but you don't like baseball.
It's true. I don't like baking. I like eating baked goods.
Oh, okay. Then, yeah.
Baking is difficult. The only thing I'm actually pretty good at baking are chocolate chip cookies. That's it.
I watched the new season of Great British Bake Off.
That is also a cultural reset for Grace. She doesn't do cooking shows usually.
If I'm going to watch a reality show, I need some drama to go on. And I really was hoping that Chigs and Christelle, I thought there was something going on between them.
Don't spoil anything.
No. Okay, well, anyways, it was fine. It's fine.
Because it hasn't been 10 years yet, okay? I still have time to catch up.
It doesn't spoil who wins.
I know, but maybe I was hoping for Chigs and Christelle, okay? Now I know that nothing happens.
I'm sorry. I had to break the news to you. It was very upsetting to me because I need my reality TV with some type of gossip.
I know. What else you got?
Okay. Something crazy happened between the Tuesday New York Times by Dow Platt and the Wednesday New York Times by Jesse Bullock and Ross Trudeau.
What the heck?
64 down from Tuesday. Virtual citizen in a popular video game franchise. Sim.
Yep.
And then in the Wednesday puzzle. Hold on. 56 down. Popular game with virtual people with the Sims.
Hello.
Back to back. I feel like we never see the Sims at all mentioned.
Never. And it just showed up back to back. Coincidence? I don't think so. This is a cult.
And yes, Chelsea and I have made ourselves in Sims, and we are roommates, and we try to throw a party, and we try to get significant others, and no one likes us. So
they actually genuinely hated us, and our party was a big flop, sadly.
It was. Well, people come in, and then they're like using our computer and stuff. It's like, have you ever been to a party before?
Take your shoes off in my goddamn house, first of all.
I wanted to kiss one person.
I know.
And no one wanted to kiss me. And I was trying to be so nice to everyone.
You were doing a really good job. I started a new Sims campaign on the computer because Grace and I were playing on the PS4. I started on the PC and immediately killed the repairman. And now 2 of my Sims are in constant mourning and thinking about Adam the repairman or Alex the repairman. I kid you not. They want to go, like, literally, I keep getting prompts like, go visit his grave. I'm like, no, we're not going to his grave.
Well, it was traumatic. He died in front of them. Anyway,
the first day I play the damn game, I kill the repairman, and now 2 of my Sims are just constant mourning. I'm like, come on. Anyway, if you don't play The Sims, you wouldn't get it. You wouldn't get it.
Those who get it, get it. Okay, so this is one that comes up a lot. 68 Across, opera highlight. The answer was aria.
Is this
Just
from
a suggestion.
which puzzle?
It's from the Tuesday one.
Okay.
But do people not know that one of the main protagonists from Pretty Little Liars' name is Aria, and she's played by Lucy Hale, who's like a pretty established actress now? Just a suggestion. You can use that.
Is it
as
spelled the same way?
Yes.
Ah. Okay. You heard it here first. You heard it here first.
That was just my little suggestion that no one will use.
Very good. I love it. I did the Wednesday, December 5th, USA Today by Zhao Xin Bernickel. The theme was called Food, Glorious Food, and essentially it was just a food-themed puzzle. It was amazing. There were repetitive food names for answers. For example, mahi mahi, peri peri, shabu shabu, and couscous. Loved it. There was also like other like random food answers, like barbecue was in the puzzle, and then this one, 26 down, food that's French for saucepan, and the answer was casserole, which I didn't realize, which is just an interesting little fun tidbit. But I liked seeing 31 Across, blank extensions, and the answer was lash extensions. Just to see that in a crossword puzzle. Yes, you can get extensions for your lashes if you didn't know. I feel like most women would know that, but maybe not. Right?
Yeah, I don't know. All I know is that, well, no, I feel like it's more popular now. I guess it depends what kind of circles you run in.
That's true.
Seems really tedious to get it done, though. They literally glue an eyelash onto your singular eyelash.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, thankfully, I actually have very long eyelashes, and when I get my brows done, they're always like, that you have lashes that people would pay for. You should just get them tinted. You should get them dyed. And I'm like, yeah, if it was free, are you going to do it for free? Otherwise, stop talking about it. I'll just buy the mascara. But, whatever. Anyway, lash extensions can actually look pretty good. So.
They can look good. I do think, though, like they look good for a little bit and then they start falling out, and then you just have like 5 super long lashes, and it looks janky. And then you have to keep getting it done, and it's expensive and takes a lot of time. So,
but some people, that matters to them, and I'm happy for them. But if it's done right, if you're doing it, if you're keeping it up, it looks really good.
I have too much anxiety for things that need upkeep.
Trust me, I know. I want to dye my hair like a random color, but first of all, it's going to cost me like $400 to do, and then I have to spend like $200 every like 4 to 6 weeks to have it touched up. Sorry. Yeah. I couldn't possibly. And then also just the time spent at the salon, like literally being in a physical space other than my house to get something like that done. Sorry.
There's nothing worse than getting your hair dyed. It takes so long, and it's just like, okay. Anyways.
It's like, moving on. Okay. The last thing I liked from that puzzle was 34 down. I feel like you would like this too. Flips through disdainfully. Hate reads. Similar to our hate watching of Twilight.
Is it really, do you really hate it if we've watched it like 4 times in the past year?
Up for debate.
I'd love to hate watch things, actually. Like if there's a bad movie, I will want to watch it.
Yes. So, yeah. What else you got?
More from the Wednesday, December 15th New York Times by Jesse Bullock and Ross Trudeau. Learned this, 24 Across. Like the anagram, I'll make a wise phrase for William Shakespeare. The answer was apt, but I didn't know that was the anagram for William Shakespeare.
Nice.
Let's see. Hold on.
I'm holding.
2 down. High regard for one's hometown, say.
Local pride, baby.
Local pride.
I would know.
We both have. You wouldn't know?
I would know.
Yeah, I would know too. Although I'm kind of overshadowed by Pitbull and his pride for Miami, so.
Yeah. I'm from Jersey. It's like a thing. Like, I will never live there again, but don't talk shit about Jersey. We're going to have an issue. It's just like a thing. So.
I want to move there so I never have to pump gas again.
Grace was shocked. She was shocked when she realized you don't pump. Jersey girls don't pump their own gas.
I drove through Jersey over Thanksgiving, and like when we got to the gas station, a man walked up to the window and it scared the shite out of me. I had no idea what was going on. Well, this one, how do you feel about this? 9 down, Young Love. The answer was Teen Crush.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of cute, but I feel like no one says that. Like, that's not a...
No, I know. Teen crush, I feel like are two words that make sense together. Yeah. But I don't know if I've ever heard that as like a phrase before. I feel like a common phrase.
It's something that you would see, like, I love going to countries where English is not the first language, but they have a lot of shirts with English phrases. Mm-hmm. And we do the same thing. Like, we have shirts that say bonjour or whatever. It makes no sense. But I feel like teen crush is something that would be, like, on a shirt at a trendy, like, teen store in Amsterdam or something.
Yeah, exactly. No, for sure. It's like English words that make sense, but it's not, like, it's not part of our lexicon, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, you look at it and you're like, it's not wrong, but it doesn't feel right.
Nothing feels right.
Nothing feels
Anyways,
right.
That's all I got.
Okay. I need to end on the Thursday New York Times by Trenton Charleston from December 16th. Today. This was so much fun. Did you do it?
Mm-mm. No, I hadn't done it yet.
Oh, I think you would actually like this. First of all, do it. If you're going to do this puzzle, do it on the computer or in the app. It has like a little fun animation at the end. So essentially the theme is 52 across, flummox, or a classic word game represented by the central grid of shaded squares in which 15, 17, and 55 across can be found. And the answer was boggle. So the center of the board was shaded, like a 4x4 square. It was shaded, and it looked like a boggle board. You know, if you've ever played Boggle, the word game. Mm-hmm. And so you can find all of the themed answers within that 4x4 grid, the boggle board. And the themed answers were 15 across, flummox, which the answer was bewilder, 17 across, flummox, the answer was bemuse, and 55 across, flummox, and the answer was befuddle. And inside that boggle board, you could play boggle and make all of those words. And at the very end, once you solve the puzzle, the boggle board keeps solving and finding those words for you. And it's really cute.
Oh, cool. Okay. I'll give it a spin.
Yes. And I also really liked this. I wasn't sure if this initially offended me, this clue and answer, but I decided that I liked it and I thought it was creative and I'm like, fuck it, I liked it. 3 down. Took a second, ? The answer was remarried. I guess I didn't like the took a second. Like,
yeah.
It feels like very like ownership-y to me, but at the same time, like there's nothing gendered about this. And I just thought it was like a cute.
Yeah.
You know, it's not cute. It was creative. I thought it was very good. And then I learned something. 40 down, surfer wannabes. And the answer was hodads, HODADS, which apparently is a non-surfer who frequents surfing beaches and pretends to be a surfer. I didn't realize that's what you could do that people do that. Why do people do that?
Well, because people want to be cool. I mean, I didn't know that. Now I know if I'm ever at the beach and someone accused me of being a hodad.
Now you know.
You'd probably be right. Because I don't know how to surf.
But I think that intention is that you're pretending to be a surfer.
I would, well,
if maybe someone is like, you're a hodad, I'm like, trust me, I am not pretending to be a surfer. That is the last thing on earth that I would do.
You do have that bathing suit that says not a surfer on it.
I do. And I also have a hat that says, I am not a surfer, that I wear to the Chicago beaches.
People do surf in Lake Michigan, not in Chicago. I learned that from your topic.
Yes.
Many moons ago. It's called 5 Rings and 5 Lakes. It's like episode 4 or something.
It's amazing. Some of those titles just stick in the head, don't they?
They're stuck in there.
Stuck.
All right. Well, should we move on? I feel like we've ranted and raved for
a very long time.
So long. Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry about that, everyone. It's the last episode of the year. We're loosey-goosey.
And our last 2 episodes have actually been under 1 hour. Usually the episodes are like an hour and 15, hour and 20. Mm-hmm. So we've had 2 shorter episodes recently, so bear with us.
My topic was kind of short last week. But yeah, so all that time you saved the last 2 episodes, you can use that to listen to us go on this episode.
For no reason. If we're feeling rambly, we're feeling good, we're feeling ourselves. And now it is time to flip the coin.
Do it, baby.
All right, I'm flipping the coin now. Heads.
That's you. I was going to get my stuff queued up, but I guess I don't need to.
Wow, calm down there, buddy. All right, so my topic comes from the Monday, December 13th USA Today puzzle by Brooke and Brandon. 33 across, unseen Bambi villain. And the answer is man.
Oh, I remember answering this one.
So we're going to be talking about Bambi today. Bambi.
I feel like we're slowly going through the Disney stories.
We are. I thought it was about time somebody did Bambi. I feel like Bambi has come up a couple times in crosswords, but I had like a list of like 10 potential topics for this week, and I had a really hard time picking one.
Interesting.
Anyway.
I found mine early in the week, and I knew it was the one. When you know, you know.
When you know, you know. Okay, kids. So yeah, let's talk about Bambi. I feel like most Americans, and probably others as well, know of Bambi from the 1942 animated Disney film. It was directed by a guy named David Hand. Okay. But did you know that Bambi the Disney film was based off of a book? You're probably not surprised, actually. So let's just hop right into it.
I didn't know, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah, no, there's nothing surprising about that whatsoever. So yeah, like I said, let's get into it. So Bambi the movie that we've all come to know and love and were perhaps traumatized by as children was based off of a book called Bambi, A Life in the Woods, written by Austrian Jewish author and hunter Felix Salten.
Okay.
Felix Salten was born in Austria-Hungary in 1869. His birth name was Sigmund Salzmann, which he later changed to Felix Salten because there was, as you probably realize, in the early 1900s, rising anti-Semitism in Europe, especially after World War I. Okay. And he was an author, so he was trying to sell books, etc., that kind of thing. So not only was he an author, he was a journalist and a literary critic, but his most famous work is Bambi, A Life in the Woods, published in 1923. A little bit about his life. His father went bankrupt when he was 16 years old, and so he had to drop out of school. He started working at an insurance company, but that wasn't like what he wanted to do. At the age of 19, he began writing and submitting poems and book reviews to various publications. He published his first collection of short stories in 1900, and afterwards was on average publishing one book a year, either plays, short stories, novels, essays, etc. He was extremely prolific throughout his career. And then Bambi, A Life in the Woods was published in 1923. I'm going to give you a very brief plot overview of the book. It differs, I don't want to say greatly from the movie, but it kind of does. So just a very quick, brief plot overview of the book. So Bambi is a roe deer born in late spring. His mother teaches him about the various inhabitants of their forest and how deers live. He has encounters with other fawns and also stags, which the book calls princes, and are actually, so the stags are actually the fathers of all the fawns in the book, but they're called princes, and it's not really directly said like those are the dads, but you can kind of infer that those are the dads. Bambi has an encounter with man called He in the book, and he's left terrified. In midwinter, hunters enter the forest and kill many of the familiar characters, including Bambi's mother. As he grows older, getting his antlers, there are many violent clashes between the male deers and lots of instances of bullying. Bambi is bullied brutally in the book. He has several run-ins with an older stag called Old Prince, who teaches him about snares and fake deer calls, and later cares for Bambi, who was shot by a hunter. When Bambi has grown gray and is, quote, old, the old prince shows Bambi that man is not all powerful by showing him the dead body of a man who was shot and killed by another man. When Bambi confirms that he now understands that, quote, when Bambi confirms that he now understands that, quote, he is not all powerful and that there is, quote, another over all creatures, the stag tells him that he has always loved him and calls him my son before leaving. So this old prince ends up being Bambi's dad. Okay. So that's basically the plot. It's different from the Disney movie in that it focuses mainly on the deer population in the woods. Yeah,
I was like, this is an adult book then?
It's actually, so it was written as an adult book, but it became popular as like a young adult coming of age story because the Bambi's coming of age kind of parallels the coming of age of like teenagers, right? Anyway, so yeah, that was literally the next point. There is a parallel between the fawn's becoming a stag and a child's becoming an adult. Unlike the Disney version, there is no chipper forest friends. There's a lot more death. It's more of a philosophical meditation on the natural world. There's actually an entire chapter dedicated to the thoughts of two leaves that are nearing their end of time on the tree, and they're like pontificating about death and like what happens after they fall off the tree. Salton himself was a hunter. He originally wrote the book for adults, but because it has that kind of coming of age storyline, it ended up being more popular for children. Overall, it takes a bigger picture look at the cycle of life in the forest and humanity's interactions within it. It's sometimes called the first, quote, environmental or green novel, and it takes a literal opposition to hunting and a figurative opposition to fascism, which is interesting.
But he was a hunter.
Yes. So here's the thing. He never personally spoke to what the meaning of this book was.
Okay.
The only thing he ever said is that the only reason that Bambi was written is because when he was hunting and he shot a deer and he had the idea to write the book. That's the only thing he ever said about this book. And so all of the meaning people are putting on it are, it's like a literary theory. Like the author themselves has not actually spoken to whether this interpretation or that interpretation is right. But I mean, if you read the book, it's a very transcendental novel. It's like very meditative. It's about nature. And we'll talk a little bit about this in a second, but essentially like the German version is much more about the balance and equilibrium between man and nature, whereas the English translation takes on a more conservationist bent, an anti-hunting, narrative. Anyway, okay, so, so my next point here was it wasn't Salton's intent for it to be a conservationist narrative. He was a hunter. He probably meant it to be a commentary on nature at large. Man isn't the only violent character. Forest animals are also brutal to one another throughout the book. Bambi is treated harshly by the buck that he learns later is his father. And Bambi ends up becoming hard-hearted, just like his father, though it's shown as like a natural progression rather than abusive. It's interesting. While Bambi is now considered a classic, the book didn't sell well in Germany initially. So Salton changed to an Austrian publisher, saw a small uptick in sales, but it wasn't until the book was translated into English in 1928 that it became a big hit. A note on the translation, which I kind of mentioned a little bit ago. First of all, if you're interested in translation, Grace did an episode on translation, episode 14, same, but different. Translation is such an interesting topic. I could probably talk about it for ages.
It really is.
Yes. So Bambi was originally published in German, and then it was translated into English. It was done by a man named Whittaker Chambers. Chambers was an American writer and editor. And this is just a little bit of an aside. I have to tell this story because it's just really interesting to me. So Chambers was born in Philadelphia, and he was raised in America, between like the major cities. He was in New York City for a while, Long Island, etc. He was a writer and an editor. He was also a member of the U.S. Communist Party. He joined in 1925. And then he became a Soviet spy between 1932 and 1938. He eventually defected from the Soviet underground in 1938 and worked for Time magazine until 1950.
What a life.
It gets weirder. He was involved in what's often referred to as the, quote, trial of the century, which was the perjury case of Alger Hiss, which is like one of the big McCarthy era, like communist spy trials. Okay. And so Chambers like testified against Alger Hiss and, whatever. He wrote Chambers ended up writing a really famous book called Witness. I'm sure some of our older audience have read that book, or there might even be a movie about it. Yeah. Anyway.
There's a movie, I think. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah, he was a huge figure in the 50s in like the McCarthyism era. And eventually he started as a communist, and then he like flipped the script so much that by the time he died, Ronald Reagan was like, I love this man. Very strange. Very strange.
Well,
anyway.
He lived his life.
He did.
For sure.
before the trial, before he was even in the Communist Party, before the trial, before becoming a spy, he translated Bambi from German to English. So, random.
Okay. Man, and I've had like the same job for 6 years.
Yeah, this guy is booping and bopping, okay? So it's largely agreed that Chambers' translation is a huge watering down of the original text, which all translations water down the text in some way, but apparently the original has a lot of like transcendental themes, and it's extremely frank in its representation of the natural world and how man and nature intersect. There is a professor from the University College of Dublin. Her name is Sabine Strumper-Krab. She criticizes the translation and says Chambers gave the book a cultural and ideological value closely related to the American society, which is very different from Germany. And Chambers' translation stresses family values and reduces the transcendental ones. She wrote an essay titled, quote, "I particularly recommend to sportsmen Bambi in America, the rewriting of Felix Salten's Bambi." And this is a quote from that essay. The English translation actually tones down Salten's anthropomorphism in places and changes its focus in others, thus opening the possibility for the story to be understood less as a human story about persecution, expulsion, or assimilation, and more as an animal story conveying a strong message about protection of animals and the necessity for conservation. So we're going from transcendental themes to conservationist themes, and I think conservationism is obviously extremely important, but it's not what the original text was written for, okay? Nevertheless, it's published in English in 1928, and it has accompanying illustrations for the first time by a guy named Kurt Wise. If you Google Kurt Wise, you probably recognize some of his illustrations. I don't recognize any of the books, but the illustrations are very familiar. Anyway, so in 1933, Salten sells the film rights to Bambi to an American director named Sidney Franklin for $1,000. Franklin initially planned to film a live-action version, but inevitably gave up and transferred the rights to the film to Walt Disney. And Walt Disney intended Bambi to be his second film. The first was Snow White, which was released in 1937, but Disney found it was difficult to adapt a full-length novel into an animated movie. Moreover, it was proving difficult to correctly and realistically animate lifelike deer, so the movie was shelved. Okay.
Interesting.
Yes. Serious work on Bambi began in 1938. So they got the rights in like 35 or something, and they started working on it in like 38. Okay. It wasn't a smooth process. There's a lot more issues with animation. There was strikes happening. There's issue with money, the whole shebang, what you can expect from any movie set, right? One of the big things that they had to decide is first the book. In the book, the type of deer Bambi was is a roe deer, which we don't have in the United States. So Walt Disney was like, okay, we're going to use, what did you say? We're going to use the California mule deer instead. But then, okay, so then we got an animator this on the Bambi team, and his name is Maurice Jake Day. He's the lead animator. And he insisted that they use the white-tailed deer from Maine. And so Walt Disney was like, okay, Jake, like, prove it. Like, why should we use the white-tailed deer, not the California mule deer? Okay. So Day and his friend Lester Hall go over to Maine, and they like set up camp there. They're hiking and camping in the mountains, blah, blah, blah. And they spend months shooting more than 1,000 photos of what is now known as Bambi country. So Disney insisted that they also take photos of other things, not just deer, such as hazelnuts, marsh grass, oak leaves, pine cones, birch bark, low bush and high bush blueberries, red maple and speckled alder trees. Day also shot trees covered with ice, snowy beaver dams, and trees charred by fire. He photographed the details of the forest floor, the lichen, leaves, ferns, pools, rotting logs, pitcher plants, autumn leaves, a bear cub's footprint in the mud. When Disney saw the photos of, like, Bambi country and the white-tailed deer, his mind was made. So Jake Day helped arrange for 2 4-month-old Maine fawns to model Bambi and his sweetheart, Faylene. The fawns took a 4-day train ride from Maine to Hollywood and then spent the rest of their life in the Disney Zoo.
Oh my gosh. Well, I feel kind of bad for them.
Yeah, it is kind of sad. At the time, I'm sure people were like, this is so cute.
Yeah.
Okay. And so The Bambi animators were given special instruction on how to properly draw a deer from an animal anatomist. Also, for 9 months, they studied the two fawns by sitting in a circle and sketching them as this fawns grew, lost their spots, and matured into adulthood. The artist apparently drew over 2 million drawings for the film, and only about 400,000 of which were used in the final film. The film is 69 minutes long. And I read that when an artist heard Disney coming down the hallway to nitpick their work, they used a code words to warn each other that he was coming, saying, "Man is in the forest," which I thought was pretty funny, which is a line from the actual film.
Yeah.
And then by the time the film was completed, the budget, they spent a total of $858,000 making the film. Remember, Sidney Franklin bought the rights for $1,000 from Felix Salten.
Mm-hmm.
We have no idea how much Franklin sold the rights to Disney. But Salten, the author of Bambi, made $0 on the Bambi film. Sadly.
Yeah. That's messed up.
Yeah, there's actually like a whole, what's really interesting, I didn't go down this rabbit hole because I'm going to go down a different rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
There was, Bambi was really important to copyright laws at the time. If you're interested in that, you should Google it. So
Will do.
Yeah. Basically, like, Salten's family eventually was like, hey, we want money for this if you're going to keep using Bambi. And the Salten family actually ended up winning. And it's a complicated copyright battle. And I was like, this is too dense for me to go through. It's not actually difficult to understand. It was just, there's a lot. So if you're interested in copyright, Bambi is, really important to the development of copyright law. So look it up. Anyway, okay. So Disney's Bambi premiered in London on August 8th in 1942, and then in New York on August 13th, 1942. The film didn't perform up to studio expectations, mostly because World War II was in full swing, and also because it received some negative reception because there was a taste of anti-hunting sentiment in the film, more so than the original material. And I found this really interesting essay written in Wildlife Society Bulletin. It was published in 2000. It was by Robert Muth and Wesley Jameson. And I'm just going to read you a couple like longer quotes from it, talking about how Bambi sparked, it's what's called the Bambi, what's it called? I forget what it's called. The Bambi.
The Bambi effect?
The Bambi effect, yes.
Is it really?
Yes, thank you. And how Bambi kind of started this quote, it's called the Bambi effect, which basically spurred a conservationist attitude growing in the United States, which is really interesting. So, bear with me. It's from that article in Wildlife Society Bulletin from 2000. Quote, Bambi gave voice to inchoate and diffuse values residing in mid-century American society, characterized by a profound sense of unease and anxiety. Although not deliberately designed as such, Bambi is perhaps the most effective piece of anti-hunting propaganda ever produced. The essay goes on to say, quote, although Bambi is the first instance of an anti-hunting message that became available to the general public through the mass media, its dramatic impact is also due to a second factor. Americans who saw Bambi in the 40s and 50s were, perhaps unconsciously, receptive to the two inescapable messages of the movie. The first message is that wild nature, left free of man's intrusion, is a Garden of Eden where animals are seen as innocent playmates, reposing in a state of harmony in which the lion lies down with the lamb, or in Bambi's case, where friend Owl, the great horned owl, cavorts joyfully with Thumper, the rabbit, and Flower, the skunk, instead of dispatching them for easy meal. The second message is that human beings are violent, cruel, and dangerous and corrupting. Man, as symbolized by the hunters, sets his vicious dogs on the harmless forest animals, lets a campfire get away that turns into a raging forest fire, shoots Bambi, nearly wounding him mortally, and, in the most powerful moment in the film, kills Bambi's mother. The misanthropic mood of the film is captured in its foreboding response of Bambi's mother to his questions. What happened, mother? Why did we all run? She ominously replies, man was in the forest. Human beings are seen as responsible for the fear, violence, and death found in an otherwise Edenic nature. The public reaction to Bambi demonstrated that large segments of American public were increasingly receptive to animal protection values and an anti-hunting message, which is really interesting. A lot of celebrities and a lot of conservationists actually look at Bambi and say, Bambi was like what woke me up. Bambi is the reason why like I went into conservationist. Bambi is why I care about animal rights. Bambi was actually like a big reason why a lot of people went vegetarian and vegan in like the 60s and 70s, which I was like, and it's called the Bambi effect, which is like part of our lexicon, and now why people like, I don't know. I just thought that was extremely interesting. And like I said earlier, Salton never like said anything about what the meaning of his book.
Intended for it to necessarily be like that.
Exactly. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. And it really wasn't until the 70s, I think, that conservationism became like a huge talking point. And also like something that was more studied. Like that's when like a lot of the big conservationists that we know, like Jane Goodall and whatever, started popping up. But a lot of these people were influenced by Bambi, which I think is extremely interesting. I remember watching Bambi the first time and seeing the mother die, and you're just like,
I know, for a kid.
Hello?
Traumatizing. And Dumbo, too.
Oh, the Dumbo, I think, was actually more traumatizing for me.
Yeah. That's what my mom has a story of, like, hearing my sister sobbing and thinking, like, running into the room, and she was just watching Dumbo.
Oh. Yeah. I'm going to end with just a couple more like interesting facts. There was like literally so much I could have talked about, so I just had to boil it down. Anyway, okay. So like I said, Bambi wasn't like super popular when it first came out, but its popularity grew as time passed. When it was re-released in 1987, the pre-orders for the tape were for nearly 10 million copies. So they didn't like in its initial release, they didn't make back any of the money, but by now they've made back way more than their money's worth. Some interesting tidbits to end on. Salton's books, including Bambi, were banned in Germany in 1936. Remember, he was a Jewish author. After Germany annexed Austria in 1938, Salton and his family moved to Switzerland and lived the rest of his life there. He died in 1945 at the age of 76. While in Switzerland, Salton wrote a sequel to Bambi called Bambi's Children, or Bambi's Kinder, following the lives of Bambi's twin offspring, Gino and Guri.
Cute.
Yes. And in that book, Gino and Guri are like the main characters, and Bambi is like the old prince character. He has like really nothing to do with his kids. He's like, I don't even know who they are.
He's a deadbeat.
That's all stags are deadbeats. Disney went on to produce 2 other Salton stories. The Shaggy Dog was based off of Salton's 1923 novel, The Hound of Florence. And then Perry was from Salton's 1938 story, The Younger Days of Perry the Squirrel. The Library of Congress placed Bambi on its National Film Registry in 2011. The National Film Registry selects 25 films every year to showcase the range and diversity of American film heritage. And to increase awareness for film preservation. And then if you were really, really worried and stressed out about the English translation not being accurate to the original German text, you have no more reason to fret, because in February of 2022, Princeton University Press is releasing a brand new translation. It's actually getting very hyped up. People are very excited about it. It is going to be translated by a man named Jack Zipes. Yeah, you can pre-order it now on the Princeton University website if you're interested.
So timely.
So timely.
It's like is this episode sponsored by?
Sponsored by Princeton University Press. And that's Bambi for you.
I wonder, it'd be interesting to see, like, to read the 2 different translations and kind of see what is missed.
I'd be very interested to see that, or read that, rather. And
it still has its work cut out for him, though, because not only is he translating, it's like he's also translating something that was written in the 30s.
Yeah.
People talk differently back then. Like
they talk and they think differently.
Is he going to make it more modern, or is it going to be like direct? Not direct translation, but like a
literal.
Have the same vibe. Like,
yeah. No, that's a really interesting way to think about translation. I know I brought this up before, but when the Odyssey was translated for the first time by a woman, like it completely changed the meaning of huge portions of the text.
Yeah.
Original portions that were translated by men for literally hundreds of years, extremely sexist and like anti-feminist, now being translated by a woman, give the women more power in their representation within the Odyssey. So is it intentional by the translator? There's always going to be that bias that you're going to get from the translation because you can't not have bias in something, right? But it also is just like a different worldview, you know, approaching it from a different worldview. Anyway, I love translation.
2 Girls in Crossword Book Club.
Love it.
Newly translated version of Bambi.
First book of the year, January, is Bambi. No, I guess we have to wait until February.
We'll start it in February.
Yes. Okay. Catch you then. Catch you on the flip side.
My topic comes from the December 13th USA Today puzzle by Brandon and Brooke, edited by Eric Agard. 46 across. Work on a scarf.
Knit or something. Yes. Okay. Interesting.
I'm finally doing knitting as a topic. My girlfriend is a prolific knitter, and she has been begging me to do knitting as a topic, so I'm finally doing it.
I was wondering if you would do this.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to talk about, so I'm just picking a couple things.
Okay, I'm ready. I'm excited.
Let's settle in. So the history of knitting, I got most of it from a blog called Sheep in Stitch, an article called The History of Knitting by Rev Blog. That was the author. Okay, so some textile arts like go way back in time. You think of like weaving and spinning. They show up in so many myths and legends. You know, the Fates weave fate, Penelope in the Odyssey, speaking of, wove and unwove a shroud every day and night waiting for her husband to return home. So you would think that maybe knitting would have like these, you know, ancient references to knitting, but not really. It's slightly more modern. Still not like super modern, but doesn't really show up in stuff like that. In fact, the word to knit didn't show up in the Oxford English Dictionary until the 15th century.
Wow. That's not what I would have thought.
Yeah, same. What are its origins?
Tell me.
The first known knitted pieces that have survived time are from Egypt around the years 1000 to 1400 AD, and they are intricate socks made with white and indigo cotton. So they're white socks with like a blue pattern on it. But the fact that the pattern is so complex is like proof that that probably isn't the first knitted material. Like people had been knitting, because that wouldn't be like the first thing you come up
imagine.
with. Yeah. So
you're lucky if you can get a scarf the first time you knit.
Exactly. That's
Ever.
like, if you can get anything in the shape of a rectangle, then you've done well. But, you know, since knitting is made out of materials like cotton and fabric that disintegrates over time, it makes sense that a lot of stuff hasn't survived. But based on those fancy socks, historians believe that knitting probably started in Egypt around 1000 AD, potentially a little earlier.
Cool.
So they also think that knitting evolved from another practice called null binding. So null binding uses one needle to splice and knot string together. So it's kind of more similar to sewing, but what's cool is that knitting and null binding produce almost identical fabric. Like they look the same, the ribbed features. But before scholars realized the difference, they were duped by null binding socks found in Syria around 400 AD. So they actually thought knitting had started earlier. Then they realized it was something else. The truth is knitting probably came from that. They were like, oh, maybe I can use 2 needles instead of 1.
Yep.
And it just kind of worked from there.
I believe that. Yes.
So what happened next? Knitting spread from Egypt to Spain first before it spread to the rest of Europe. And that was probably during the Islamic conquest or the Crusades, like brought it back to Spain. And then it went to the rest of Europe. But in the 1000s, European knitting was confined to the very rich, the very royal, or the very religious. So the first pieces of European knitting were found in the tomb of Prince Fernando de la Cerdo of Spain, and they are detailed silk pillow covers that date to 1275 AD. So like royal stuff. But also a lot of early knitting in Spain was stuff for the Catholic Church. So it's like these gloves stitched with gold and silver to make them fancy. You know, all that garb that the priests like to wear.
Yes.
And then something weird happened in the middle of the 14th century. All of a sudden, there were all these paintings of the Virgin Mary knitting with baby Jesus started
Okay.
popping up in Italy and Germany. Random, but that shows like, okay, knitting had made it to Italy and Germany then around the 14th century.
Okay.
She wasn't knitting at that time, or there's no proof that knitting was around at that time. But like that Virgin Mary would be knitting, even though there's a lot of paintings of her knitting. But some people think like it was an acceptable thing for her to be doing because it was seen as, very feminine at first.
Okay.
But then, at the end of the 16th century, knitting became an established craft and business was booming for one thing specifically, knitted stockings for men. So, during the Renaissance, men kind of wore those capris and then the high socks.
Yes, I love it you called them capris.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they,
No, I know.
Are. So those socks were knit and they had to be really good quality because if you had baggy socks, that was like one of the biggest fashion faux pas.
Faux pas.
Embarrassing. Do not show up in baggy socks.
If you even think about coming to mass with your baggy ass socks drooping down by your ankles, we're sending you home. You're done.
So in response to this demand, knitting guilds sprung up in the 1400s, and they were only for male knitters, and they were extremely rigorous. So if you were a man who wanted to become a master knitter in a guild, you would have to spend 6 years in apprenticeships and traveling the world learning foreign techniques and patterns. And then when you returned home, you had to pass a final exam, which meant you had 13 weeks to knit up a felted hat, a pair of stockings or embroidered gloves, a shirt or waistcoat, and then the final showstopper, if you will, speaking of Great British Bake Off, a knitted carpet or wall hanging. The article compares this carpet to a grad thesis, quote, the culmination of your 6 years of learning, a representation of your mastery, artistry, and good taste.
Damn.
And they're very intricate. We will post some pictures of our Instagram if you want to follow us there.
Okay.
To see what these men were up to.
I'm really interested to see what these men were up to, because when I think of like knitted, like I know knitting can be extremely intricate. Like obviously, like your girlfriend is an incredible knitter, and I've seen some insane things that she has done. But like I'm thinking about I've got a knitted hat right here.
Yeah.
I'm just imagining this like being like artwork on a wall.
Well,
like,
it's like
how does
they
it work?
use very thin thread, and
right.
I mean it's crazy what they did. It's like there's like flowers and like intricate things. There's like an Adam and Eve themed one.
I'm hooked. I'm ready. Catch me on Instagram. I'll see you there.
So knitting became like a very serious art. It was taken seriously. Parisian guilds were considered the best of the best, so they were always, a step ahead in fashion. But I found this kind of interesting because, today, or like since then, knitting has kind of evolved to be more of like a woman's craft, and it's not seen as like a fine art anymore.
Which is
But it was when men were doing it, and it is an art. I mean, some of the stuff that people make with knitting is insane. We'll talk more about women and knitting later.
Please. But
first, we have to talk about 1589, when Englishman William Lee invented the knitting machine, which was a sign of the Industrial Revolution to come. And in a few generations, the industrialization of knitting transformed it from a serious art to, like, the businesses were just using machines. So hand knitting, instead of being an art, became a sweet, respectable parlor craft for Victorian ladies.
A parlor trick, if you will, for ladies.
You would think that hand knitting would die out because, you can do it so much quicker on a machine, but that was not the case. It persisted. In the 1920s,
Nevertheless, she persisted. Sorry.
Exactly. In the 1920s, during World War I, there was a shortage of socks and other items for the armed forces, so governments would encourage women back home to unravel old knitted items and use spare wool to make garments for soldiers. There's something that Alex does. She'll get like a sweater from Goodwill and then unravel it and use the yarn to like make a new sweater or something else. But
amazing.
Basically, they were like, okay, see if you have old knitted stuff in there that you could take apart and make socks for our soldiers. Yeah. The popularity of hand knitting continued during the Great Depression because it was much cheaper to make your own clothes, and you kind of had to know how to knit because like your clothes would fall apart and you couldn't just like buy new stuff easily, so you had to know how to fix all your socks and your underwear when everyone had knitted socks and underwear. Okay. I'm going to talk about knitting as resistance during World War II and other war times.
Yes.
So most of this information is from 2 articles, one on boardpanda.com called Here's How Knitting Was Used as a Tool to Spy on Enemies During Wartime by Naringa Utarate, and then on howstuffworks.com, an article called Crafty Wartime Spies Put Codes Right into Their Knitting by Nathan Chandler.
Yes.
So steganography is the act of working a code into an otherwise ordinary item. So people have done this with hair, or like more modernly an MP3 file, and of course knitting. So if you've ever looked at a knitting pattern, it kind of looks like a code. In fact, during World War II, both the United States and the UK banned the printing and posting of written knitting patterns because they thought that the repetitive abbreviations could easily be ciphered into codes. So you could even publish knitting patterns. But they couldn't ban the act of knitting itself because they needed people to be knitting. So they needed the clothing. So while some women were tasked with creating clothes, others used knitting as an espionage tool. An example of this is in Belgium in World War I. So the Belgian intelligence agents would link up with elderly women who lived near railway stations, and they had windows that looked over the train tracks. So the women would sit in the window and knit and look at the train tracks. And so when an artillery train passed by, they would knit a purl stitch, or they would drop a stitch, aka leave a little hole if a troop rail car passed by, and then they would relay this information to Belgian intelligence. But they looked like they were just sitting there knitting, and everyone was knitting at the time, so it didn't draw any attention to it.
Yeah. Ooh.
So it was the perfect way to spy in plain sight.
Yes.
Knitters would encode messages into their fabric. So one of the ways they would do this is kind of similar to Morse code, because there's 2 different types of stitches. There's a knit stitch, which is like a horizontal line, and a purl stitch that looks like a little bump. So it was easy to do any binary codes, basically. One of the most famous examples of a knitting spy was Molly Rinker of Philadelphia. During the Revolutionary War in the United States, British troops would take over the homes of the colonials, which the colonials were not happy about. And when the Brits came to Molly's house, they wouldn't allow the men of the household into the dining area, but Molly was allowed to serve the soldiers, and she would obviously be listening to their conversations during this time. After that, she would write down the information on a small piece of paper, wrap it around a little rock, and then wrap the rock in yarn, making it look like, just a ball of yarn. And then she would go outside to a rock where she would sit and knit, and she would drop the yarn ball inconspicuously, so that when a American soldier rode by, they would pick up the yarn ball and then learn the secrets of the British military.
Ooh.
But they didn't suspect a thing.
Idiots.
During World War II, a British spy named Phyllis Latour Doyle parachuted into Normandy. Casual. She was part of a special ops plan to take down Nazi forces that were occupying France. And she roamed the countryside pretending to be a teenager with a bag of knitting. So she was very helpful and talkative with German troops, and she got a bunch of information from them. And then she said she ultimately sent 135 coded messages before the Allies finally liberated the country.
Wow.
In 2009, she told the New Zealand Army News, quote, "I always carried knitting because my codes were on a piece of silk. I had about 2,000 I could use. When I used a code, I would just pinprick it to indicate it had gone. I wrapped the piece of silk around a knitting needle and put it in a flat shoelace, which I used to tie my hair up."
Wow.
So.
Damn.
Yeah.
People were doing crazy things
knitting.
back day. Yes.
If you're ever in a war, don't trust any knitters you see.
Don't.
I think knitting today is experiencing a revival among millennials and Gen Z, along with crocheting and also sewing.
Yes.
There's a more awareness now about fast fashion and making things sustainably, and also this desire to make things yourself and also do something that's you have to be very present for.
Yes.
It's slow. It's almost meditative in a way.
Yeah. And it's also nice to do something and see a result from it. Do you know what I mean? I feel with living and working in a capitalist society, sometimes you feel like you're living in a vacuum or a void. You wake up, you sign onto your computer, and then you sign off from your computer. What do you have to actually show for what you're doing? And, that's obviously an oversimplification of someone's daily life. But to have a hobby or a pastime where you are sitting and physically are present with this thing and you're crafting it with your own hand. At the end of it, you have a sweater, a pair of socks, mittens, a hat. Like, yeah, it just feels like you're actually alive rather than just like a droid, or like we're like living in like a simulation or something, you know?
Well, you're making something too that can like last, you know, they can get passed down. Like I was reading a lot of different articles about knitting and like, you know, why people get into knitting. And this one person I read about, she was just saying how, yeah, like older women use it as like something they can pass down like to generations that'll be around after they're gone. And one story that I thought was cute was a woman who she like during Passover, you wash your hands as like one of the things that you do. And so she traced her grandson's hands onto a towel and then she knitted his like hand shape into the towel, and he still has that towel now and he's an adult, but it kind of like captured that moment in time.
Right. And I know like Matt's grandmother quilted a lot. We have so many like, and she sewed, and like we've got so many like little things that she's either quilted or like pot holders that she sewed together for us. Like she always made like, you know, little covers for tissue packets, you know, just like things like that. Like you pass it down and like, you're like, I'm never going to get rid of this. And yeah, it's like an heirloom.
Yeah. And there's so many ways you can do it now sustainably. Like there's a lot of secondhand craft stores. You can like at estate sales and at thrift stores, you can find like curtains and old sheets and, you know, as far as sewing and quilting goes. But anyways, it's very cool. Something to get into. I'm like learning more about it through Alex because you know, she does all these things. Speaking of, I feel like I have to shout out her Instagram.
Plug her.
Her Knitstagram, I should say. Not that she has more followers than we do, but you can follow her on I Run This Knit. Check her out. She did knit. If you follow us on Instagram, you might have seen we posted crossword mittens that she knitted for me.
They're like shockingly beautiful, and I was just amazed by.
The inside has like topics that we've talked about in the crossword, and yeah, it's very cool.
Although we should reshare them again just to show.
Yeah, we'll do it in our carousel for this week.
Yes.
Although the actual crossword pattern, not a crossword, don't come for us.
Don't come for us. It's okay.
It's an artistic take on a crossword, but
yes.
I'm going to end with a quote from the Sheep and Stitch article that did like the history. Quote, "The reason I think knitting has persisted for so long is because it is beautiful, plain and simple. It's beautiful to do and beautiful to behold. Knitting satisfies a deep desire in us to create beautiful things, and it allows us the satisfaction of being a creator. Buying a sweater just won't give you the same intense pleasure and pride as knitting one with your own hands. That's why I think knitting will outlast us all. As long as we humans retain the part of ourselves that yearns to create and innovate, the part that delights in beauty, then knitting will live on, from that first mysterious knitter to the four corners of the world and beyond."
Beautiful. Beautiful.
That's it, baby.
That's knitting. That's it.
I saw one of my favorite things on, this is crocheting, which is kind of similar, but on TikTok, a woman, she basically like had a key code for the temperature of the day, and it corresponded to a color. So like when it was really cold, it would be blue, and then, you know, get orange as the hotter temperature. And every day she crocheted a line on a blanket.
Yes.
So by the end of the year, she had a blanket that reflected the temperature of every day.
Yes.
It's just so like,
it's amazing.
Such an interesting thing.
My brother's girlfriend's sister and mom are doing that, which I think is just amazing.
I'm getting into crocheting. I crocheted my cat a tiny blanket that he loves.
I love that she's into crocheting, because basically I saw somebody was wearing a crocheted flower ring, and that's literally all that I want from Grace. That's the only reason I talk to her anymore.
It takes so long to get good at it, though. But that's like my problem, is that I don't have the patience. But I know that if I stuck to it, I could get good at it.
I know.
But anyways, that's another issue. Let us know if you have if you have issues. If you craft, then let us know too.
Yes, we love crafting. We're not very good at it, but we try a different craft all the time. We're always like, let's try this craft. We fuck it up. And we're like, let's do something else.
We did. I made an orange garland. Chelsea's didn't work. She put it in a bag and it got moldy. Mine worked. That was like our only successful craft, I think.
What was the other craft that we did that was really successful?
the bats kind of worked.
The bats worked, but that
We did
honestly
bat
should have
garland.
worked.
Yeah.
Like, if that didn't...
We did something...
Yeah. We did
else did we
something
do?
else with the garland. What did we do that day?
Oh, we, so for our work holiday party, we wore matching... Well, we already talked about this. Yeah, we put iron-on stuff on matching
Yes.
velour sweatsuits. Anyway, yeah, so if you craft, let us know. You can talk to us on Twitter at The Good Eve Girls.
Or Instagram at The Good Evening Girls, where we will be sharing a lot of knitting photos this week. So tune in. I'm very interested to see what Grace is going to share.
I bet you are.
I am.
You can also follow us on TikTok at The Good Eve Girls, and we will see you next year in 2022.
In
Everyone,
2022.
Keep curious.
Yes. Always keep asking questions. We love where your head is at. And we hope that in the new year, we will continue to provide you with more information that just keeps you more curiouser and curiouser. So
Many questions, not many answers.
that's it.
That's our motto.
That is our motto. If you're not left confused at the end of every episode, then have we done our job? I don't know.
No. All right. Well,
That's it. And that's all for 2021, folks.
that's a wrap.
We'll see you next year.
Bye-bye.